Hello and welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. Poland is facing an institutional and political confrontation following a landmark court ruling requiring recognition of same-sex marriages conducted in other EU member states. While framed as administrative compliance with European law, the decision also shows a broader standoff between a progressive pro-European government and a conservative Eurosceptic president. Joining us today on TVP World to discuss the political implications of this ruling is Leszek Jażdżewski, Editor-in-Chief of LIBERTÉ. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hi, great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So first, can you help us get a broader view of this conflict right now? How has this decision shaped the ongoing political feud between the government and the president?
Well, so obviously the president, which represents the far right, is quite opposite the very idea that not just the same-sex marriages, but even the civic partnerships, which he vetoed not so long time ago and blocked any sort of progress in the parliament. He thinks, Karol Nawrocki, that it is against any sort of tradition, the relationship between men and women. So he is ideologically opposed to any concept of same-sex marriage, and also against EU being involved in any way regulating those sort of things. At the same time, when you think about the Civic Platform, which is considered a liberal party ruling Poland right now with Prime Minister Donald Tusk, for them it is a little bit of a problem because they are not really progressive party. They're centre-right, they are part of the EPP, but they are by no means anything like the CDU in Germany, not to mention the Netherlands or any other Western European or Nordic countries. For them, the civic partnerships is, I think, the optimal solution. And in many ways, EU having this sort of involvement in the same-sex marriages is an issue because they don't want to be seen as being against EU, but at the same time, they would try to avoid anything that would resemble EU being involved in, either human rights or any other issues that are considered, internal and being decided by Parliament here in Poland. So I think they're in a bit of a pickle regarding this ruling by European Court.
All right, I think you hit the heart of the issue here. Now, a lot of critics opposing this is saying that the government is essentially using courts in Brussels to achieve what is not being done clearly through Parliament. Do you think that that is a fair criticism, or do you think there's other explanations behind why this step was taken?
Well, honestly, it is really not a ruling that would make any difference regarding the internal law here in Poland or another country. It is simply respecting the fact that there are people who have the legal contract in their own home country, and therefore they cannot be treated as differently if they go wherever else in EU. The problem is that it could be seen, instead of like being simply a pragmatic solution, the fact that the same-sex marriages are treated the same everywhere in EU, which is basically guaranteed by EU treaties. It should not be controversial. The problem is that it's seen as sort of the leeway or opening the door towards the same-sex marriages being constituted here in Poland. And if I were honest with you, I really think that it's not the best way to guarantee this, guarantee this sort of laws and this rights. It should not be the Brussels. It should be Warsaw. And I do think the Polish democracy wouldn't be really full and real democracy unless we have real equality against the law, and unless the same-sex marriages are the equality of marriage is introduced here in Poland. I really think that will be in a sort of like US in 1960s vis-a-vis the black people. really needs to accept the fact that people have the rights to be married, and regardless of the sexual orientation. I think we're getting there, but it might be another 10 or 15 years before Poland accepts what UK and Germany and other countries regarded as basic human rights. But I think the fact that Brussels is involved is not really helping the governments to sort of reconcile the right wing, the center right, with European Union here in Poland.
Right, like you mentioned, regardless of people's stance on whether they approve of same-sex marriages or not, it should come from within the nation as well. Now, do you think that this also run the risk, because this is a very culturally sensitive issue as well, so I can see a lot more people paying attention to it, and might reinforce the perception of change being imposed from Brussels and inadvertently strengthen these sovereignist politics? Like we see more rise on far right or even Eurosceptic individuals using these as a cultural, using this as a talking point about the overreach of European Union.
Yeah, I totally agree with your framing of this issue. So I think in principle, really the court had no other way to actually, it's like the law should be the same everywhere in the EU. That's the law. So I think they had no other choice. But if you think from sort of political perspective, that means that for the far right, but also for people who are not really that interested in EU treaties, it is simply the overreach by Brussels, which makes really difficult to make the case that Brussels is simply a sort of regulating a sort of technocratic governments and institution, and that it is also playing a part ideologically, and this is everything is about this center left or this LGBT rights, and this is the sort of argument that the right in Poland has been making, and not just in Poland but in the whole region or everywhere. When you have the right-wing governments, they actually try to frame EU as this ideological leftist project, which is not really true. But this is making the life of the EU pragmatists more difficult. I think what they should do is to try to be on the offensive. It is like, yes, we cannot introduce the same-sex marriages in Poland yet because we have the right-wing ideological president, but this is a basic human right. We should do it. It is really unfair that you have to go to Berlin or Amsterdam to be married. We should do it here in Poland. It's going to take some time, but we are very happy that EU is helping us getting there. I don't think they have courage enough to do it. They don't have the balls to make this offensive argument. So they're going to be on defensive. And I think overall it's going to diminish the standing of the EU in Poland, unfortunately, which is, it didn't have to be this way.
Right, and like I said, these cultural issues are actually very relevant, and not just in Poland, but across the globe. Even I think in the United States, you see a lot of these cultural issue turning into electoral results as well. Just got a minute, but real quick, do you think this is going to have potential electoral implications of this issue in the upcoming political cycle?
Well, I think if you observe Polish politics, you see that EU, which hasn't been really the case before, is becoming a political issue, is becoming a divisive issue, is becoming really polarizing issue. So for the right, it's really a presence. They really can use it as sort of like trying to frame EU as ideological project against the government. Government obviously wants to frame the right and the far right as being for Polexit. So this is really fueling the internal conflict here in Poland, and I'm quite sure it's going to be used next year before the national elections as an argument in the political debate here in Poland.
Right, it's definitely going to reflect the existing political division as well. Thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it, and thanks for being with us on TPP World.
Thank you. Great pleasure.
And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TPP World.